Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss, and there's Meatball. She's conveniently located today by her water bowl. So today I'm doing a video. It's only been 3 days since my last video where I told you guys that you probably shouldn't trust the orc license. A lot of stuff has happened over these next 3 days, and part out of the consequence of that video, because pressure was put on, I think. What I'm going to tell you now about what's been going on, part of it is visible, unquestionable fact. You can look at it on Twitter. You will see it happening. And then part of it is based on inside information that was given to me by people who would, for very important reasons, want to remain anonymous, and where I can obviously not reveal that source, and I cannot at this time independently verify. I can say that these are people that I consider to be a trustable source, but it is possible that it's wrong. So I want to make the distinction between those two things. And I'll try to make a clear distinction in the video between when I'm talking about stuff that you can yourself see actually happened versus stuff that I've been told in private. Okay? So, what's been going on in the hobby the last several weeks is something that you're going to need to look at the last couple of videos I've made, last 3 videos actually, to know about the OGL, all of that. I don't want to have to repeat myself, otherwise this video is going to get too long. Suffice it to say that you have had a group of people that come from a number of different companies, competitors, you could say, to Wizards of the Coast. Most notably, the ones that stood out at the beginning were Paizo, Pathfinder, Chaosium, Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, and Green Ronin, a bunch of leftist stuff, Magic Deers. And these guys came together and said they're going to make their own OGL, with hookers and blow. No, not without those. Not these guys. I'm quite sure they're not that fun. So they're going to make their own OGL that is going to be an open OGL for everyone and all this sort of stuff. And everybody cheered, saying, "Wow, that's it. This is it. They've saved the hobby," and all this sort of stuff. And looking at these people and knowing 20 years of experience with them, I had my very strong doubts, because these are people who spent decades trying to politicize role-playing games and engaging in cancel culture, blacklisting, attempts to ban and censor their people that disagreed with them. Some of the people there personally tried to get me banned or blacklisted, right? Hello, Nicole. So they I know these people, I know their work, right? It seems very strange to me that all of a sudden they'd be all in for free speech and freedom of conscience and everything else. And of course, here's the thing, I have a lot of people who get in touch with me privately, who can't, for whatever reason, or won't reveal their identities, but who are people that are connected at different levels of what we used to call the RPG industry, right? The bigger companies and things like that. And lots of other people just pass me things they've found out, some who aren't in that part of it, but are on YouTube or are on other stuff, or just small press publishers or work in different places that give me dirt and that don't want people to know that I'm the one doing it, right? Because they would obviously be fired. It really amazes me how there can still be people in some of these places, right? Like, Wizards, there were people, at least until very recently, who were, just kept a completely low profile. Nobody would ever know that they weren't all in with the woke sensitivity. And, just kept quiet, nodded when they had to nod, put up the BLM sticker when they had to put it up, put their pronouns on their profile and all this. And then, they hated every second of it and were secretly telling me things, right? So cool, right? And I've had someone now who is involved in one of these companies that I just, talked about that are creating the ORC license, they call it, the Open role-playing game creative license, which somehow they reduced to orc. And what I was told was that there was a lot of chat going on about how they were going to do this, because right now they don't really have, the license isn't isn't done, but they still haven't finished even planning it, right? So it's not that these guys were, because I've heard some people saying, oh yeah, they would have been planning this forever. They were all set up and ready to go in the contingency that this would happen. Well, if that's true, they really should have prepared better, because they do not apparently know what they're doing yet. So there's a lot of people involved and a lot of egos and a lot of discussion. I was told at a certain point that they were in fact going to have like a board that would oversee the orc license, and there were different people pushing for that and people pushing to be the heads of the board. Nicole Lindroos of Green Ronin was apparently being bandied about, is what I was told, as a name, possibly by Nicole Lindroos doing all the bandying. I don't know. There was a push for this. And so I wrote about that on Twitter. I said, this is what I've heard. I've had a reliable source tell me this. A lot of people were bothered by this. This was after I did the last video saying, that Paizo has not responded to the question of whether they're going to have some kind of a morality clause style censorship board, where they're going to restrict who gets to use the orc license on the basis of politics. And they were answering everybody else's question, but they weren't answering the people that were asking that question. There were a lot of people asking it, so it's not that they just missed it, right? In the same thread, right next to it, there was a question that they answered before and after, but they refused to answer that one. And so that had set up my alarm bells. Then this guy tells me in anonymous conditions about this thing about the board, and none less than Nick Chick, the creator of the Magic Deer, and the person that was basically the first person to want to politicize mainstream RPGs, to insist that mainstream RPGs need to have a political leftist, obviously, push to it, right? And it's not just her, right? Like, all of these companies are full of people that in 2016 started the Gamers for Her petition, where they added their name to this list of support for Hillary Clinton, in the election, and gave these warnings that people who don't join the list are going to have consequences, right? There were people that were in that Gamers for Her movement were essentially threatening, saying, we're weeding people out. You got to decide what team you're on. And if you're not on Team Hillary, then you're going to have, you're going to have to pay for that, right? So that's the attitude of what these companies usually do. And now all this sounds really bad, right? And there were a lot of people that were sharing that tweet. And at the same time, I found out that Autark, Alexander Macris, Adventurer, Conqueror, King, right? One of the most based companies that there is, one of the most based guys, right? There is no question at all. This guy is not, there's no chance whatsoever this guy's going to be on to anything progressive. He announced that he was supporting the orc license. And I got in touch with him immediately. I mean, we're old friends. I used to work for him in Defy Media. We've got a long association. So I reached out to him. I said, what's going on? How you're in this? They're letting you be in this? And he's like, well, yeah. And apparently he's got a long-standing connection with Eric Mona. And Eric Mona, who's one of the creators, I'm pretty sure he was one of the writers of the original Pathfinder 1E. I might be wrong about that. But anyways, he's, Paizo guy. There's Meatball. He said that he yes, sure, that they want as many people as possible. They want to have a wide tent and all of this. And so Autark, the creators of Adventure Conquer King, Alexander Macris, one of the people that they routinely try to cancel, is now on their list of the supporters of the orc license. And I was very surprised by this. And so then I wrote to him in public on Twitter. I said, do you know anything about this business of a board and whether they're going to engage in having woke morality clauses that are going to limit who's allowed to use the orc license, right? And well, first of all, he had said, I don't know, they haven't kicked me out yet, right, or something like that. And then Eric Mona came in to that thread, and he responded, and he hadn't quite responded in a very clear way, but this discussion lasted another day until yesterday, and then yesterday I continued to address that question, and he finally said, without any unconditionally, because at first he was writing, it's like, well, it is not the main intention of the orc to engage in any kind of morality clause. We want it to be as open as possible, and so, but he didn't. He was using that lawyer speak, and part of what I think was going on is that at this same time, behind the scenes, there were these other people that wanted the board, they wanted the censorship conditions, they wanted Nick Chick to be in charge. Well, Nick Chick wanted Nick Chick to be in charge, probably. And Eric was having to try to deal with that, and with something that he knew was essentially a poison pill, right? That if you have censorship, that where a person joins a gaming license and then can at any moment be kicked out of it and have all of his products no longer protected by that license because of his political views, or because the person in charge of the censorship board has a personal beef against him, or just because he refused to raise the fist for, I don't know, for whatever, for Black Lives Matter at the moment that everybody was told they had to raise their fist or something like that, then his entire career is ruined. If you know that can happen to anyone, then nobody's going to sign up for that license, right? That's the fundamental problem with the OGL 2.0, is that nobody's going to sign up for that when Wizards can just say, well, you're going to have to either do what we say, or we're going to kick you out of the license, and suddenly all your work, all of your everything you've produced is no longer something that you can sell, right? And so finally, at like a day and a half after this conversation had essentially begun, Eric Mona got on and he said in a tweet that the main OGL itself is not going to have any kind of morality clause, because if it did, it would be DOA, dead on arrival. He said it that way. And it was quite an unequivocal statement. So this is good news. And, he denied all of the other things that my source said. And, again, I can't verify absolutely that what my source said was true. But I went back to my source, and what my source told me after the fact is that this all was happening, this discussion was going on. And I saw somewhere else, I think it was Mona or somebody, one of the people on their public Twitter, one of the orc license people, said, I could see how certain things going on could be interpreted that way, or something like that, right? And so it seems that there's a cabal of people inside these companies that are doing the orc license that really wanted to have the conditions being put in there so that they could prevent the evil people that they don't like from getting to be able to use this OGL. But apparently that kind of got kiboshed. And there were apparently specifically a large number of people that were opposed to the idea of Nicole Lindros being in charge of anything. Now, this is, again, all hearsay. I cannot confirm it, but this is what I was told. And it's not the first time, let's say. I've had a really major game designer, who, again, must remain anonymous, that have said that there's a ton of people that really don't like Nicole Lindros, right? That they have to put up with them. There's a lot of people, a lot of the really woke activist types, right? The Nicole Lindros and Tracy Hurleys of the world are just exactly as you imagine they would be, right? Like intolerable harridans that nobody can bear to be around. But they have a lot, but these poor people are they have to pretend like, how could you live like that? I certainly couldn't do it. There's no job in the world that would be worth it to me. But there you are. So in order to keep it could be they might have a wife and kids, and they have to pretend to agree with these horrible, horrible people in order to keep their jobs. And I feel very badly for them. And I know some of them are like that, where some of them are, old people that are now semi-retired, making these games out of an act of love. And they just don't want to get canceled. They don't want their grandkids to start saying that they're that they're monsters or something because they heard it on Twitter that you've got to cancel grandpa now, right? And yeah, I can kind of understand all that, sure, but I couldn't do it anyway. So this is apparently the story. It looks as though there was some discussion going on internally. It looks like at the moment, the side that is sane, the side of sanity that says you can't possibly do this OGL without having it be completely open and free, because otherwise it's dead on arrival. Eric Mona is absolutely right with that statement that he just said. And apparently what they're going to do is that you're going to have your basic OGL license. Then there's going to be specific system licenses that people will tie to that orc license. So, maybe Chaosium will create an SRD for their, basic fantasy. I think they already have one. But anyways, let's say that they do this again, or that they take the one that they have, and they're going to say, this is licensed under the orc license, but they can put conditions into the use of that specific SRD, right? So now what that might mean is that all of these companies do that, and that's the poison pill, right? That's actually the trap, right? The license itself is open to anyone, but every single system that all of them except Alex Macris put out is not going to have that openness. It's going to have conditions. You can only take stuff from this SRD if you speak out that trans women are women and whatever else, But I mean, as long as they don't kick out Alexander Macris, autark is the canary in the coal mine now. That's it. This is a guy that all of us can trust. We all know that he's not going to go for anything woke. And, if he said, obviously, if they try to kick me out, I'll let people know. And if they put in conditions that make it unbearable, I'll quit and everyone will know, right? So he is literally the canary in the coal mine. If Alex Macris says that it stinks and he's quit or he gets kicked out, that the whole orc license is toxic. If he stays in and he can do what he wants there, then that the orc license is at least useful for something. And he's going to do an SRD for it or whatever, and he's not going to put censorship conditions. So that means that essentially any OSR people could publish under the orc license using the Axe system, the Adventure Conqueror King system SRD that will be there undoubtedly. So that's good news for us. It means they can't stop us, right? And again, I say us, but I probably won't do that because I repeat that you don't actually need an OGL unless you're going to use particular proprietary stuff or the facsimile of proprietary stuff, right? So like, if you're using spells like Acid Arrow, well, that might be, really Melf's Acid Arrow would be something that would be absolutely something that Wizards could sue you for. If you just have a spell called Acid Arrow, that'd be a lot tougher, but they could try. But if there's some other game that has that spell and they have an SRD, then you do that. It's protected under the SID. And then they would have to sue the SRD and the orc license. They have to sue everybody involved to try to claim that this is not legal, right? Because the problem would be that the defendant would say, well, it's in the SRD, right? It's totally fine. So that's the only reason to do that, right? But if you've got some, like in my products, whether it's system neutral, well, sort of system neutral campaign books like World of the Last Sun, I say sort of because it's for OSR and it's inspired by my Dungeon Crawl Classics campaign, but it's not a Dungeon Crawl Classics source book, and it doesn't have a system in it. It's a world with a bunch of cool stuff that you can put into your games. Arrows of Indra, Lion and Dragon. Here I've got Cults of Chaos, right? Cults of Chaos is an incredible mechanic. Just had a really good review the other day on YouTube. You should look it up. Look up for I guess Cults of Chaos. I forget the name of the person who did it. I'm sorry, but it was a good review about how it's probably the best set of mechanics I've ever written that allows you to create infinite numbers of sinister sects, cults, and bad guys for your game with a medieval authentic tinge to it, but you can use it in any fantasy game. So anyways, like any of this stuff, I don't need an OGL in there. There's nothing proprietary of Dungeons and Dragons in those books, So again, I'll probably leave it to my publishers. I definitely want my publishers to use the Wizards OGL 2.0 if they're doing that. But I'll leave it up to them if they want to use the orc license or not, assuming that the orc license turns out to actually be free speech. We're going to have to see. And as a final thing, it's funny, right? It's very funny to me because a guy like Eric Mona, he says, if you had censorship, the orc license would be dead in the water. What he and anybody else who ends up signing up to the orc license is essentially conceding is that if you want things to actually work, you have to use the structure created by the classical liberal values. You have to have a system of free speech and freedom of conscience to be able to do something that'll bring people together and get everybody an equal shot and an equal opportunity, and then it's up to the merit of the individual product. So all of their woke bantering for 20 years, all the gamers for her and the blacklist and the cancellations and the BLM and the LGBT and all of that stuff that they were doing and demanding had to be an essential part of the game, that activism had to be in there and it had to be part of the company culture and it had to be part of the products, representation and diversity and all this stuff. And this anti-liberal view of saying, well, no, you don't have a right to free speech. Your free speech doesn't allow hate speech, right? And stuff like that. All of the fundamental liberal values were essentially denied by them in one form or another. That's all performative, right? If they don't really believe it, if they're willing to sacrifice all of that immediately when their bottom line is in danger by the hands of, a mega corporation like Hasbro. They're going to they know they need to stick together. Either they're going to hang together or they'll hang separately, as Ben Franklin said, right? And now when the need arises, they're going like, well, yeah, we can't do this. As much as you might want to ban Alex Macris forever from the orc license, as soon as you do that, people won't use the orc license because they'll be afraid you're going to ban them too, Nicole. So that's it. That's the end of it, right? Suddenly, they're all admitting that their values are fundamentally flawed and unworkable, and that the values of liberal classical thinking, that is to say, the RPG pundits' values, were right all along. And I'll leave you with that. Please check out my products. They're all in the description. Buy my stuff if you want to support me. Share the video anywhere that you think people will be interested or where you think it'll piss them off. Hit like. And keep checking out for more news. I'm hoping to really do a review sometime soon because I'm getting tired of doing endless videos about this particular issue, but it is the biggest issue in gaming in quite a long time. The hobby is to some degree being totally shaken up by this, so it makes sense that I have to do them. Currently smoking Neerup, what is this? Neerup Acorn, that's it, plus Argento Natural.